Hello, hello, hello. I'm Dima Starodubtsev, Master Saib. And today is a very important day, I feel. We will have collective intelligence talks. First of all, I'm really fascinated how many smart people, decide to say something about the topic. Previously, it was Diak reading circle, which discussed primarily the stuff around knowledge graph, collective stuff, artificial intelligence. So we will move here within this mini conference a bit further, trying to setting up the field which actually doesn't exist yet. It's just several years ago when scientific journals around collective intelligence emerged, I believe it was 2022. It just 15 years ago when first real scientific evidence appears. So we have a lot of different ideas coming from the all different fields which converge to the idea that we together can think better when if we will think alone. Okay. And yeah, I'm really happy to experiment here in H City, Patagonia, starting this discussion on probably one of the most exciting and important topics. VR talks not so much, yeah. And before starting, before allowing everyone to speak, so we here will have something like 8 participants within the conference. The budget is something around 10 minutes with 3-5 minutes to changing the equipment and answering the questions. So it's more like lightning talk conference without deep dive, with a purpose to demonstrate the spectrum, give a shot to applications, shout out to the world, come on, we are here, we are not only discussing this stuff, we are actually doing real stuff based on really solid and deep understanding of this field which just emerging before our eyes. So I will start from a very short edge perspective on the collective intelligence, starting from the history. It was Aristotle who observed these things such as wisdom of the crowd. He saw that this peer tables with dishes was appearing in very interesting way without actually the central coordination. And I believe it was Nicholas Condorcet who set up this jury theorem in which he demonstrated that probability of the voter increase with the amount of voters, which actually set up the field of scientific direction for further democracy systems. And in the 20th century, it was quite modern computer scientist Engelbart who observed that group of three people augmented with computer was performing 3 times better than if they would perform alone. Okay. Marco Darigo, he was, I think, the first who actually created some really practical thing. It was the colony ant optimization problem, which he demonstrated with using only 2 simple methods, such as random walks and sigmergy, pheromone markup of the pathways, swarm, gain really collective intelligence. And I believe the last important point in the history of the topic was done by this Santa Fe group led by Anita Woolley, who during quite broad research, which was with involvement of 700 people, she demonstrated actually the C factor. We did several like we run a lot of tasks on a group starting from 2 to 5 people, and demonstrated actually that there is such like there exists a C factor. So this is a factor that actually define the performance of the group as like for some groups higher than others groups, and also a standalone task. So it was she who actually, you know, put this mark in the history, which after which there was no doubt for practical applications of this collective intelligent things. In this history, it's kind of subjective through the lens of these positive sum ideas within collectives. Yeah, so like in the parallel, of course, there are a lot of development within economics with free markets stuff and auction theory. You have like Nash type equilibria, which emerged in the middle of the 20th century. Of course, you have like Lampert incepted, Satoshi applied distributed computing things, which actually also independent direction of this collective intelligence ideas. And altogether, they, I do believe, like really shape the field we are trying to advance further. I want to mention several key methods within the collective intelligence field, which are, like, I believe, just like super fascinating things. Shelling points is this idea of coordination without communication. We can agree, we can understand, and if we lose somewhere in the city, like the best place to meet again is just to get back to the place we've seen each other. That is like really good example of these Shelling point ideas. You have in the blockchain, you have longest chain rules where you have this like temporal aggregation to set up a global order of events. Conway's Games of Life is a fascinating example how simple rules, simple local rules actually lead to like really complex emergent behaviors. Stigmerge, which is marking up the paths or like marking up something to enable this information for other who discover the space. And so on and so on, many more. We have many more methods with one common property is that simple local rules produce global order. Yeah, and this is, I think, the most fascinating things behind collective intelligence. So I believe we will all rely on this simple idea while building our applications to shape this collective intelligence. And I would love to mention some apps by really smart guys. So NASA try to apply the problematics on a planetary scale. Tasks such as crowdsourcing, self-assembling structures, and sensor webs. DARPA thinks that it is like one of the most strategic fields in sciences, because it enables human-machine swarms within military operations, obviously. And we are in Siberia. We truly believe that that is the path for the superintelligence. Like so, yeah. The next part will be in the end. Now I want to give a voice to Joshua. Joshua, amazing. Joshua will make a small talk on the collective understanding through knowledge graphs. They are created really amazing app that help us here in the edge to discover like actually what happening here, because so many stuff happening here, and we created really cool applications like that allow us to gain some pieces of collective knowledge. Joshua, come in. Just
Hello. Is it on? It is. Okay. Thank you, Dimitri. Guys, I haven't got like a particularly polished presentation to show you, but I do want to just jam with you guys on what we've built, show you the current state of the graph, because it is a really interesting practical application for collective intelligence. And let me just sort this, whatever this is. And then I want to end it by just showing you briefly about how we plan to scale this through an economic mechanism. But to begin with, let's start with the graph. So if anyone wants to, please don't do it on mobile. You can try it if you wish, but you can go to graph.bonfires.ai and you'll get the screen. And you can choose one of the bonfires that are active. You can use EdgeGuardo, which is the one that we are currently using at Edge to aggregate information across multiple group chats. So we're actually aggregating information from across the Edge main group chat itself. EdgeGuardo is basically in that Telegram channel, and it's listening to all the messages, and it's using those messages to form this knowledge graph. We're working on the UX at the moment. This is a new iteration. It's somewhat clearer, but anyways. So I'm just going to quickly show you, oh, there you are, that's Telemann, okay? So you can see how Telemann is in the last, this is probably from the last like 5 or 6 hours. In the last 5 or 6 hours, he's connected to all of these different things. And you can go in here, maybe find yourself. There might be some people in this room. There's Colton. Aaron, maybe you're on here. Take a look. Right. And what's cool about this is that it's automatically generated just from the messages that are going into the group chat. So there's actually no manual input required in order to have this graph. This graph is used for memory, right, as a memory for AI agents to read from. This is incredibly powerful because if you want the AI agent to have a very specific recall from the group to say, hey, what was Telemann doing today, for example, what it would have to do in the normal sense is ingest the entire chat history and then find out what Telemann is doing from that entire chat history, which is incredibly compute intensive and slow and often produces quite poor results. So what you want is a graph, because graphs are very easy for agents to traverse, especially if you commit nodes of the graph, to RAG. So you can actually search for the node of the graph based on the query, then use that as the center point to then go and explore. So that's actually how we run our agents. There's a lot of complexity here that I want to share with anyone that's interested afterwards. Please find me, but we only have 10 minutes. I just want to quickly demo you some stuff. This was cool. So the Zora campaign where you people are getting paid to post for creator coins and such? It's happening at Edge. You get free money. If you don't know it, you can go and check it out. This is the Zora graph. I just searched for the key term Zora. And so this is just from the last 48 hours. So you see that's Zora in the middle. And you can see generally some ideas around it: creator economy, NFTs, digital art, some of the people that are involved, and some of the other systems, right? What's cool about this is this graph doesn't know what Zora is. Sorry, this agent didn't know what Zora was until this graph was created. So I can say, what does... And you can talk to the graph. You can do this via the agent that's in the main Telegram group chat. You can go speak to EdgeGuardo yourself, or you can directly DM it. Or you can talk to it via the graph here, which is this. And so this is pretty cool. So it's just telling you that right now this is a comprehensive map of EdgeCity's collaboration with Zora, and saying Zora is doing this as a token distribution. It's a blockchain-based NFT and digital creator platform. It's cross-promotion for exchanges on all these things, right? And this is just from it reading the chat for the last 48 hours. So this is a really powerful example of collective intelligence in action. And this is something that can actually scale across many different use cases. And I'm just going to briefly touch on a few of the use cases now. So at DevConnect, we are going to be giving every community hub, which is the community-run small sort of booths around a specific subject. We're going to be giving each one of those their own agent that wants to take one. We are running one at DeSci World. We're running the World of DeSci Hub, so we're going to take one. And various others have already agreed, and hopefully the entire 16 of them will. And what that will mean is that each one of these agents will form its own graph like this. And this is cool because people who go to the event will be able to find out what's happening. People who aren't at the event, who want to sort of keep a finger on the pulse, can query the agent. And for example, people at the event can transcribe directly into the app. Like the Telegram agent has automatic transcription, which would all get added to this collective knowledge graph. But what's cool is if all of these hubs do this, then we can actually have a meta bonfire, which will consist of all of the hubs. And this is something that we're discussing with the DevConnect team, because they have their own LLM to be queried on their super app. such that instead of just querying their context store, which is a static document, which they kind of query against, they could actually, via API, simply connect to the meta bonfire, which is containing real-time updates from across all of the hubs. And then you can go a step further, and if you have your own sort of friendship group or your own sort of internal dev connect, lads, ladettes group, whatever, put the agent in there, and it's going to add that to the same graph. So then you have this sort of incentive for people to contribute to the graph because your knowledge is going to be queried across the whole thing. So that's the tech. It's very awesome. We're super excited. It works. Please use it. If you want your own one, tell us. How long do I have? Perfect. Okay. So we just spoke a little bit about Stigmergy there, and I want to describe to you guys the scope of what we're building. So this is the tech that allows you the creation of the knowledge graphs. The knowledge graphs themselves can actually be essentially curated and shared on a global network that we call knowledge network. And the incentive for doing so for this is that if you share your knowledge, this is a diagram. This here is a bonfire, and there's some people doing their work, just collaborating, sharing information, and the bonfire is generating that graph. Now that graph can actually have snippets of it curated and shared on what we call knowledge network, which means that other people who are connected to knowledge network, it doesn't have to be bonfires, it can be other agents, it can be simple data input, data users via API, can retrieve snippets of graphs which can be reproduced on their local environment. And if they do so, then we issue a tokenized reward to the issuers of the retrieved information. And that's what we call the knowledge economy. We actually have a token paper releasing this week on this, and I want to share it with you here. So this is the paper. It is primarily for computing the value of the retrieved information on the network. It's not specifically computing value of the token, it's computing value of retrieved information on the network, for which we issue points against. If your information are retrieved, you get a point. And that point is the value of that point is determined by this white paper. Those points we then issue tokens against, okay? So I want to just zoom in on this introduction. It's a little bit wordy, so please don't get too lost into it. But very simply, we're trying to say that the semantic value of a word is very difficult to be mapped via language, and so we are trying to recreate an understanding of the semantic value of a word through various orthogonal mappings, through the graphs, through reputation, and other such things. But I want to just zoom in on this bit here, which is if the above framework holds, which is to imply that we can map semantic value more precisely through repeated mappings and through other things such as reputation, if that holds, then it enables the emergence of a global marketplace of ideas where concepts possess measurable life cycles and here leave stigmergic traces that guide collective action and innovation. This concept of stigmergy is something that we've just touched on here. It's very powerful and it's something we're very excited about. The idea here is that if you show via retrievals and various other mappings that your information is being used across the network, then it's a signal to the rest of the network that this knowledge might be useful. And it's a signal to the rest of the network that there is a demand for this type of knowledge. And then you can build this essentially cooperatively built and sort of almost like living knowledge network or collective intelligence that people will use, people can contribute their knowledge to and receive incentives for their contributions towards. So just by network analysis of an independently decentralized created knowledge graph, you can actually get an understanding of what knowledge is in demand, what knowledge is useful, and then we can begin to map a value to that. And I won't bore you with it, but very quickly, we're very excited about it. It is essentially, we're trying to map semantic distance by proxy of gravitational pull, where the semantic targets and the semantic outputs are given a mass, and then essentially we can map that to gravity, so then your ideas are mapped against that. So it's a long paper, lots to talk about, don't have time for that. But I also want to just finish on this, which is, this is an NFT that we are doing as a pre-sale for the token. You can mint one. This was hand-drawn by our chief AI officer's fiance, a lady called Mara V. And this is a, say, medieval modernist version of what we call cosmolocalism. And the top here, the cosmo, is the digital commons, right? It's a shared digital commons in which something like a collective intelligence would live. This is a collective intelligence that we all partially own, with our proposed system, for example, or many others, that we all partially own and we should all contribute to, but that we can all utilize. And as you see here, the bridge between the digital commons, here we're proposing Ethereum as the sort of most effective bridge at this point. And it is used in service of your local environment. So people use the shared collective intelligence to improve their local environment. And it likewise has a feedback loop where your work in your local environment feeds the global collective intelligence. And so this is essentially what we think the future could and should look like, which is a cooperatively owned and then eventually a commons infrastructure on the global scale, which is used in service of local needs, because the global is not very good at serving the local. Thanks. Yep.
Thank you, Joshua. Fascinating ideas and practical stuff. We are already using your actually knowledge graph. I do use this thing to explore actually what happens here at the edge. Yeah, also this mint like rewards for contribution is also super important but extremely hard topic. We will discuss it further, okay? It's kind of the cornerstone, or holy grail of the whole thing, yeah? So thank you, Joshua. I want to invite Keith, who will make a dive to ideas of reputation. As Steve, Steve, yeah, Steve. He will present his idea on the legions. It's large-scale coordination using internet native organizations, or I believe is DAOs. Yeah. Thank you, Steve.
We call them that. Thank you very much. Can you hear me, everybody? Let me plug this in. Got it. Thank you, everybody. All right, let's talk about this concept of legions. Okay, so in order for the future to be great, I think that we need to dramatically amplify democratic power. And so, what might that look like? I think it looks like huge, these kind of swarms of humans coordinating together over the internet. What might that look like coordinated via software? So let me demo that in a second. Let me back up a second. So this is a piece of software that I built. It's called Relay. It's about to make Discord, Signal, AirDrop, and Slack all obsolete. It's a all in one fell swoop. So it's like it's a decentralized and encrypted messaging app. You can see, you can have as many accounts as you want. You can self-host it. It embeds the Tor daemon, so you can use it anonymously, which is important when you're trying to work together to, say, like, oppose powerful people that you're worried may come after you. Let's see. So yeah, so that's the big picture. That's what you're looking at right now. So let's talk about the most unique feature, the Legions feature, which is the core of this talk and what ties into collective intelligence. So here's a legion. So a legion is a big hierarchy of chat rooms. You put each person in charge of a different room, and then you have some goal, and then together you're trying to achieve that goal. Here's a hierarchy of rooms. Here's a cooler visualization of this legion. So you can imagine trying to accomplish something very high level, like basic income for every human on Earth or something like that. You probably wouldn't want to put all of that in a single legion, but for demo purposes, here's the concept. Then you can have things, whatever, more regional. You put different people in charge of different rooms. I'm about to add kind of task management functionality to this, so in each particular room, people know what they're individually supposed to do, so that they can do their part in kind of achieving the larger goal. And so when it comes to so Dimitri in his intro mentioned an important concept of like. We need kind of like people kind of locally, locally doing things, locally focusing on kind of what they know in order to kind of affect the broader whole. And so one way that we can have these legions actually kind of evolve, kind of self-evolve and improve over time to be more effective over time is I have this concept of a formation. So this is kind of the default formation that people are in when they join a legion. By default, they join kind of like right under whoever invited them into the Legion, but that's probably not like the ideal long-term structure, right? There's going to be people who join later who are like very good. They should be like higher ranking in some way. So when it comes to like how do we make these sorts of organizations function better? The concept of a formation is that basically people in each particular room would be able to kind of do this private voting sort of thing and say, you know what, these two people I'm working with, they're both really great, but they butt heads, they should not work together. Or these, this person's really good, they should be higher ranking, or this person is crazy and I don't want to work with them in the future. Whatever it is, and then you can imagine, maybe like the creator of this Legion clicking new formation, and then based upon all those signals about how this Legion, how this kind of organization could function better, I'm going to try to create a cool animation where you see kind of this organization kind of restructure itself according to those signals. When it comes to hierarchical sorts of organizations, my concern is always that it's like, okay, you get the efficiency. It's great to have efficiency so that you can accomplish whatever your goal is. But of course, if people are not just creating some particular initiative, but if they're creating a new country or trying to do something more governance related with a Legion, then you wouldn't. I don't want to recreate like the existing whatever. Where you have like entrenched power at the top, and it's very hard to kind of unseat them. So what could you do about that? Biology, who I disagree with on so many things, I won't even begin to talk about it. But one good thing that biology talks about is exit from like something that is kind of not serving your interest, and being able to have that ability to move. So wouldn't it be cool if you're like, you know what, this person who has created this Legion, they're being too much of a dictator. I want to be able to fork this entire Legion, fork this entire organization. And so that means that like, and fork it from like a certain point on downward. And so that would basically invite everyone in the Legion to a new one. It wouldn't kick them out of the original one. You're not like forcing people to choose just one or the other. And so that's a way I think we can have the efficiency of hierarchy without the kind of like dictatorial entrenched power at the top. Because like if all your constituents in some sense, or if all your I don't want to say followers, but if the people you're working with are all about to leave, it's like if all your employees are about to quit, or whatever kind of organization you're creating and running here, if they can just leave, then you'll probably behave better. So that's the concept of a Legion and how it ties into collective intelligence. Oh yes, so in the very very near-term future. Hopefully in 9 days we will see. I'm going to get this to a point where anyone can. Okay, so what would it look like to have kind of legions in the world? I'm very excited to work with some people, spawn a few legions that are trying to solve different problems, and then we will shortly be able to go onto social media and like do keyword searches and find people who really care about this problem we're trying to solve, like with a legion, and say, hey. Instead of just having mute rage, instead of complaining and having way more polarization than necessary on social media, people yelling at each other because they don't feel like they don't have anything better to do, they don't know how to solve the problems. Say, hey, instead of yelling at each other, how about you click this link and join 10,000 other people who are like actively trying to solve this problem? We're pressuring politicians, creating new countries, whatever the case may be. And so. Another way that this ties into collective intelligence, in addition to this formation idea of the kind of internally superior structures for organizations, is and it ties into Bonfire's AI and Veritas. Of course, if people like do not have a clear sense of how they should go about solving a particular problem, or they're like blaming the wrong people or something, like I think it'd be really cool to to have chatbots, or to do some sort of integrations here where people can understand, like, okay, we need to reform the IRS, reform the FBI, reform figure out like which particular lobbying groups are like bribing politicians the most, that are like therefore acting in the most anti-democratic way. You really need quite a bit of nuanced knowledge in order to be effective, and in order to kind of hold accountable the people who are actually guilty for things. I wouldn't want like mobs, confused mobs forming or something like that. And so the way I've been picturing this kind of concretely being usable before Bonfires and Veritas, I wanted to talk more to you both. So I have purchased the domain shitpoints.com. What is shitpoints.com? So the idea is that people who misbehave in society should accrue shit points. And humanity should have like this global shit list. So if someone's on humanity's shit list, and now it's very, and so you have all these people who are citing all these sources. Here's why I think this. It's not, this isn't just like, random confused people think, Elon Musk is a reptile and so he needs to be stopped. It's like I keep imagining these mechanisms where it's like people from like opposite ends of the political spectrum or something like that, both need to like agree on that, like, yes, this is a factually correct statement, or like, yes, this is a reasonable like source that is being cited that backs up this claim that like, this person lied, or backs up a claim that okay, for some reason this journalist is like accurate on most of their stories, but whenever they do talk about, I don't know, like certain military things or something, or cover a certain company, it's like bizarrely inaccurate. I mean, then you can really start to see like, well, wait a second, is this person being bribed? Are they being coerced? I really want to have more insight, and want to visualize for more people more insight into exactly what certain problems are, which parties are responsible, and then have these huge swarms of people holding bad actors accountable in every society. So that's what I've been pushing for and working on this the last couple of years. I have a few minutes for questions, I believe. Anyone want to ask anything about legions, about shitpoints.com, about any relay? Yes, Vishwa.
You remember the question. Okay, basically, how is what you're doing different from what China is already doing, aside from it being decentralized? And I also want to talk about accountability. Mm-hmm. And I've raised like due process concerns about this before, but like, are you just not trusting like traditional means to do this? Couldn't traditional mechanisms for holding people accountable just be reformed? And what's to say there's any real evidence-based accountability in a decentralized system?
Yes, interesting question. I mean,
lots of questions. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, those are good ones. I mean, where to begin? I mean, the mechanisms we have for holding backers accountable, it's like they're so bad, I almost don't even know what they are. Like, what does it even mean? It's like, okay, like, somebody writes like a wildly false story. I mean, I guess people who think they've been harmed sue or something. I don't know. But I mean, in terms of accountability, I mean, like I mentioned, like if you make it so that like people like kind of all over the political spectrum are like have to weigh in order for certain information to even be like publicly posted as like a claim against somebody, you could Keith here has kind of reputation pilled me, and I'm thinking more about like, okay, well, wait a second, if you if each particular user who may be anonymous or pseudonymous technically, if you can see very transparently how they've sort of voted and how strongly they feel, and the sources they've cited on like their entire body of work across like a bunch of different issues, then then that transparency can help. Furthermore, I'm imagining that people are going to, I don't know, probably trust people more politically similar to them more, or something like that. So instead of, maybe there's a default view where you can see kind of the consensus of what everyone thinks about how accurate different statements were and things like that. But if you can toggle certain things and say, oh, I just want to, I think these people who've weighed in are very reputable. I think they're very reasonable. I see their arguments and these like comments or whatever. And so if you can, also be able to view things just from the people who you think are more reasonable, then that would be, yeah, more of a customized view. I guess is the crux of what you're asking, like, how is this not just like whatever cancel culture with cooler technology or something? Mhm. Yeah. I think it's really going to depend on like people who create the Legion, and so I want to give them the tools to have that rigor. For a lot of things, it's like, okay, if someone's like running, running their organization that is theirs, that's a different, story, obviously. But yeah, there's a lot of bad actors out there that need to be held accountable. So I'm more worried about what happens if we don't amplify a democratic power and like the oligarchs continue to just take over. Like, I think that's a worse scenario. But anyway, so there's the Legion stuff. But yeah, I will work on the design of shit points and see how more things can be baked in. Like my one last thought. I have 30 seconds. The most interesting model that I've seen, now that you bring this up, is where in order for people to sort of, I don't know, try to kind of vote to take something away from someone, whether in this case would be kind of like reputation that you're taking away in some sense if you're criticizing someone or accusing them of lying publicly. There's models where you are giving up something that is valuable to you in order to do that. It could be money or whatever. Keith's talking to me all the time about reputation. If you like stake some reputation on, like, because in those cases you could even you disagree with the vast majority and say, I think this person's wrong, everyone else is drinking the Kool-Aid, and then over time you would see who is proven right and who is proven wrong, and so the system can get more kind of intelligent over time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve, for giving us the legions that will really empower us. And I want to invite to the scene my friend Keith, who will give some insight on reputation protocols, which could be very valuable, addition to the legions.
This is probably the second time I've talked into a mic my entire life. A life of anxiety doesn't lead to a lot of public speaking. I'm good now, but yeah. Okay. Thank you. Let me just figure out how to do. How the heck does presenter mode work? Does anyone know how to do presenter mode in Gamma? I just see the notes. Where does it present to? Does anyone know Gamma? No one's used Gamma? Cutting edge tech. Okay, figure out how I'm going to do this then. Okay. I guess I could just put it over there and then put my notes over here. Okay, I'm going to pivot here. Go back. This is going to be weird. Okay. And I'm going to read out of a markdown file. This is going to be fun. So I'm going to read this because I made it this morning. And if I don't read it, I'll probably just ramble on and on. It'll take forever. And I'll talk into the mic without hunching over. Okay. Okay, let me locate the slide is to the right. Okay, so I'm going to have to go over there and move forward. All right. So what I want to do is ground some of the discussions around collective intelligence in like human history, I think that might be useful for the audience. So that's the kind of contribution I'm trying to make. Collective intelligence is an ancient evolutionary technology. So for hundreds of millions of years, social organisms have been solving coordination problems that far exceeded their individual capability. Consider an ant colony. Each of these ants are actually pretty dumb, but the colony as a whole exhibits sophisticated problem solving, building ventilation systems, farming fungi, waging coordinated warfare. So the colony itself is actually a quite intelligent entity, operating at the level of complexity that no single ant could achieve. Prairie dogs post as sentinels who watch for predators, freeing up others to forage. And this cognitive division of labor frees up those foragers to focus on finding food and making the whole group effective. Wolf packs and dolphin pods coordinate complex hunts through coordinated distributed sensing and communication. These aren't just cooperating individuals, they're operating as a collective intelligence where the whole genuinely thinks better than any specific part by itself. I just made these slides, so they're made by Gamma, which is really cool, but I hope everything is correct. So around 70,000 years ago, humans went through what Yuval Noah Harari called the cognitive revolution. We developed sophisticated language, the capacity to create and act on shared beliefs and understanding, and the ability to cooperate in large groups based on common knowledge. So for the next 60,000 years, until agriculture, humans lived in communities of roughly 150 people, what we call Dunbar's number. Here's the crucial insight. The human mind is designed to operate or evolve to operate at this scale, not as an isolated intelligence, but part of a collective intelligence. We're designed to be in community not only emotionally, but also cognitively. That collective intelligence ran on two coordination systems that worked in tandem. The first was value. This is basically our intuitive understanding of quantity. If you gave me 5 fish and I gave you 1 fish back, we both knew there was a kind of asymmetry. We could just kind of feel it. We didn't need ledgers and we didn't need currency to track this. We engaged in a fluid reciprocity that is just very natural. And our brains naturally and informally kept track of this rough balance. This worked because value is fungible. 5 fish had the same value regardless of who held them. 5 is still 5, assuming they're the same size fish. The second system was reputation. This is our knowledge of who had a history of bringing about particular outcomes. Those with positive reputations reliably produced outcomes aligned with community goals. Or at least this is the definition of reputation I'm using. We knew who was a good hunter and we knew who wasn't. We knew who was good at cooking and we knew whose cooking to avoid because they made people sick. We knew who you could trust with your children and we knew who you couldn't. And crucially, we knew this specifically. Not just Bob is good, but Bob is good at hunting, mediocre at tool making, and quite terrible with children. Okay. I lost my spot. Okay. Now, reputation isn't the same thing as trust. Reputation is a kind of track record from verifiable evidence of past outcomes. Trust is a prediction that others make about your future behavior based largely on that record. Reputation is the data and trust is the inference. The distinction matters because it clarifies the mechanism. Reputation is backward-looking evidence and trust is a forward-looking prediction, at least in the way that I'm using it today. Think of these, you can think of these, this is a weird statement, but you can think of people as kind of neurons in a brain. So in your visual cortex, you have these lower levels, they detect edges, and then a layer up, they detect lines, and then a layer up, they detect shapes. The higher layers build abstractions. This hierarchical specialization emerges naturally, with neurons at higher and higher levels abstracting with a kind of abstracted vote on what reality is. So a village of 150 people works kind of the same way. Specialized knowledge nodes and clusters, so a hunter and a group of hunters, are arranged in functional relationships, collectively building a model of the world and deciding how to act in it, so collectively. And just like you need multiple senses to perceive reality, because touch alone or vision alone gives you an incomplete model, you need diverse and specialized nodes. Redundant information has diminishing utility, but diverse, reliable, and specific information is essential. These specialized roles in our communities were a kind of proto-institution. The healer, the council of elders, the hunt leader, these were institutional positions, regions in a collective mind, whose authority derived primarily from demonstrated competence. And reputation was always multifaceted. What made you a good hunter wasn't just your skill with a spear. AI changed this is funny. The other hunters cared about your tracking ability and courage, but the cooks cared about whether you brought back meat regularly and shared generously. So what it means to be a good hunter depended on the subjective point of view of the different parts of the collective mind. So not a single universal score, but a context-dependent evaluation from multiple perspectives with different stakes in the outcome. Okay. So then agriculture happened about 10,000 years ago, and settlements grew way beyond Dunbar's number, hundreds and thousands, then millions of people. And here's where something fundamental broke. We were able to scale one of our coordination systems beautifully. Value scaled because of its fundamental property of fungibility. Value attaches to goods, not to people. 5 units is 5 units regardless of who's counting. This property allowed abstraction into currency and ledgers and markets and eventually global financial systems. But reputation catastrophically failed to scale. Why? Because of a different fundamental property, non-transferability. Your hunting skill is yours. It can't be abstracted, tokenized, or transferred. We can't directly observe and keep track of the reputations of 10,000 people. And with pre-agricultural social technologies, primarily direct observation and gossip networks, we can't maintain reliable reputation tracking at the scale of a city. So Dunbar's limit is real for humans living in this kind of social structure. And our brains and social systems together can't track reliable social models beyond about 150 relationships. So this ended up with a kind of moral failure, a structural change. When reputation couldn't scale, the feedback loops that had shaped human behavior for 60,000 years mostly disappeared. And when you remove those feedback loops, the strategic landscape changes dramatically. Behaviors that were previously suicidal became viable. In a village of 150, theft and violence are self-defeating strategies. If you steal from someone, then within days, the entire community knows. You face ostracization, which in evolutionary terms meant no fire, the diminished ability to hunt, the misery of isolation and likely death. Reputation propagates quickly through direct observation and gossip networks at the scale of Dunbar number size societies or tribes. But in a city of 10,000, defraud someone in one neighborhood, then move to another neighborhood. No reputation propagates. You're functionally anonymous. Suddenly, fraud and violence become emergent and viable strategies for resource acquisition, not because humans became immoral, but because the feedback loops broke. Our social environments created the conditions for emergent behaviors. And for those humans with biological predispositions towards antisocial behavior, those unfortunate humans, dispositions that in small communities would have led to swift isolation and death, and would have been checked by those consequences. Well, in large anonymous cities, they became environments where such tendencies could flourish unchecked, which was good for no one. The result, well, we lost an integrated collective intelligence, or it degraded. Instead of functioning as a unified and broadly cooperative cognitive system, we fractured into adversarial subnetworks, groups with internal cooperation but external conflict. Imagine if your brain's visual cortex and auditory cortex stopped cooperating and started competing for resources. That's what happens when collective intelligence when reputation fails to scale. We ran successfully on 2 coordination systems for 60,000 years, and then one broke. So we've been running on half a system for the last 10,000 years, and this is especially problematic now when we're all quite connected through the internet. There is reason to be optimistic, though. I'll get to that. So now let's fast forward to today. The consequences of this scaling failure are everywhere, and they are accelerating. We built elaborate institutional structures to replace and extend beyond our proto-institutions, regulatory agencies, expert bodies, credentialed media, formal governance systems. We tried to recreate the healer, the Council of Elders at scale. And to be clear, we achieved extraordinary things: modern medicine, global coordination, scientific advancement. But here's what we forgot. These proto-institutions worked because their authority derived from demonstrable and verifiable competence tracked through reputation. We scaled the structure without scaling the accountability mechanism. Okay. I'm like slightly disagreeing with some of the wording changes as I go. Okay, I'll probably just have to pause and I'll do a part 2 for those that are interested. Today, the FDA official can systematically be wrong and face little or no reputational consequences. A source of misinformation can spread falsehoods for years and remain influential. A politician can break promises repeatedly and stay in power. This isn't about individual bad actors. It's about an architectural flaw. We tried to scale institutions without scaling reputation systems that kept them trustworthy. Okay. There's a lot more slides, but I think I'll pause there. I think that will be helpful, and I don't want to take up much more time, but if folks are interested, I'm happy to talk through the rest of these slides, which Claude woefully underestimated the time it would take for me to read. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, for historical perspective. I think we missed something really important from your presentation. But anyway, let's go on forward. I want to invite Charlie, who will give some perspective on the really interesting stuff around collective intelligence. And like to not break things, I just read because it's for me the new topic. It's broad listening idea, and he will represent it as toolkit, as open source toolkit for broad listening thing. Thank you, Charlie.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So my project is called Context Engine. It is meant to be an open source toolkit for broad listening, which is just kind of the idea of taking inputs from many people and then making sense out of it. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, so a problem as I see it, we have communication issues at multiple scales, kind of at cities, at company level, but the big one that I'm thinking about is how do we launch a kind of cohesive response to rapid AI progress, especially when it comes to ending up with good AI policies. A lot of present-day discourse is about kind of slowing down AI or speeding it up, and I'm not convinced that that's really a choice that we have. It's I think it would be better if we were able to see kind of a tree of different debates about how AI is going to affect us with regards to healthcare, with regards to education, with regard to the economy, and so on. So there's a software called Polis, which is the current state of the art for, I would say, large group discourse software. It was mentioned in Vitalik's DAC post. the basic idea is that you agree or disagree to various statements, and then you end up with a report that shows which statements are consensus and which ones have some difference. So it allows you to progressively drill down and kind of find the crux of various issues. So I'm working on an upgrade to Polis, which allows for more question types. So there's something fundamental about the agree-disagree, but when it comes to AI, you can kind of turn anything into that format. So I think the ultimate form factor for normal people will be something where you're just kind of talking to your phone, and it's kind of interviewing you. If you're the citizen of a city, maybe it's asking you which services are working well, which ones aren't. If you're in a company, it's like, which of these projects do you think are actually going to work? Which ones are kind of giant boondoggles in the making, or which ones, which of your teammates are very good at certain things, kind of like what Keith was saying, a mechanism to give feedback on the people in your environment. So it's built on Ethereum, meant to be EVM, you can deploy it on any EVM as a non-programmer. I think that's important. So you'll be able to launch new instances of this easily without programming. There's a new cryptography which doesn't exist in Polis, so you can kind of have your responses which are agree or disagree, but you can also encrypt them. And then they can still show up in the responses on the other end. But if someone's looking at your profile, they won't know which way you voted. So kind of another way to incentivize honesty. And since it's built on Ethereum, you can inherit a lot of the cryptographic abilities, like the encryption. You can, with Polis, you kind of sign in with an email, but it doesn't, you could theoretically sign in with multiple emails. So in this way, you could attach kind of proof of human attestations, whether that's something like the orb or where it's more of a social graph of people attesting to each other. And this is kind of an AI native software. So it finds clusters of people and groups, and then it kind of explains what their differences and similarities are. So maybe leading towards some future of kind of automated debate and coalition building between groups, where humans still make the ultimate decisions, but where you kind of have an AI agent that you train over time, which is doing this type of negotiation on your behalf and kind of coming back to you when there's a certain level of uncertainty. So this is kind of what the format would look like for one of these questions in the simplest sense. You have agree or disagree, and you can also have like a rating of importance or conviction maybe, so that groups can kind of bubble up to the top which of these questions they think are the most important. And you can also, there's voice features, so you can kind of just talk into it. I've done some kind of minor trials here at the reading groups for Edge, so I'll show you just kind of, this is a live demo too. There's a QR at the end, but if anyone responds to these, they go right into the results. You can kind of see over on this side, these are questions where there's the kind of consensus, and then if you go to the right, you see questions where there is less certainty or more difference. And also there's a kind of, based on the results, there's kind of a clustering. This is taking the math from Polis, but then there's the additional AI feature where you kind of analyze the clusters, and then it gives kind of an explanation of what is the difference between these groups. So kind of who could use this? It's meant to be a tool for events like this to gauge the kind of opinion space. I think there's a lot of us here around the DIAC concept, but in the reading group discussions, we found that there's actually some interesting discussion to be had about what DIAC is about, and to kind of define, to have an artifact which shows that, I think would be interesting. A lot of the time when you go to a conference, there's no artifact at the end of it. People have a bunch of interesting discussions, but then if you weren't there or if you miss a day, there's no way to kind of figure out what were people's reactions to presentations, what were the interesting discussions that came of it. So ideally, in the long run, I'm hoping that something like this will be useful for people when there's, for example, political debates about how we should deal with AI. It would be powerful if there was kind of crowdsourced opinions about these questions, and you could hold political leaders to account and kind of ask them if they agree with kind of specific statements rather than just more broad statements such as freedom. There's been a lot of success at the city level in Tokyo with broad listening. There was a candidate who formed his entire platform kind of based on these types of inputs. Didn't win the election, but it was such a popular feature that it was made a permanent office of broad listening. So one of the things they noted was that you had to be technologically sophisticated to participate in this. You need to be able to use GitHub. So trying to really reduce the level of technical sophistication required. And even though it uses Ethereum, you can log into this with your phone number, with your email address, with like your Google account, and then using OAuth, it generates a self-custodial Ethereum wallet. So there is ways to have crypto apps that are also user-friendly. Once the cryptography is more built out, I'm going to try to trial this within companies. In the Plurality book, there's a lot of talk about how increasing the efficiencies within companies might be a valuable proposition. So making something like this profitable and then using it to fund further open source public goods. And then I think internet communities in general could use stuff like this to potentially earn money by having kind of private data which is able to be inferenced from the outside in exchange for funds, similar to this knowledge graph bonfires idea that Josh was talking about. Future extensions involve more cryptography, such as zk-TLS for private group formation. So you can make a group based on kind of any internet activity, based on being a member of some community, based on your age, this type of thing, but it could also be privacy preserving. There's a very good paper by Pooja Olhaver called PCare, which is an idea of digital communities training custom models and then potentially earning money from that. Future extensions, I think agent-to-agent negotiations when there's a private information element could be interesting, using homomorphic encryption and similar mechanisms. So if you know what kind of deal you would accept, but you don't want to broadcast that information, you can imagine multi-step agent-to-agent negotiations. And all the tools currently exist for an AI whistleblowing toolkit, because you can prove that someone has an AI lab email address, for example, and that can be a source of legitimacy. So nobody really wants to fill out forms. No one really wants to do surveys. So I'm trying to turn this into something which is more like a conversation with your phone, or ideally even like a large-scale social game. Maybe it could take the form of choosing your favorite historical features and watching them kind of battle it out and weighing in on the outcome of that. Having kind of a debate tree about AI, having it in a form that normal people can understand and absorb in like 5 to 10 minutes rather than something that's very long form. Having multimedia world building, so allowing groups of people to prompt AI models together, generating short form like kind of Black Mirror episodes that are short but positive or negative, kind of like futures we want to aim for and avoid, and then connecting those to present day policy debates. And then kind of maybe having bots for stuff like Twitter, Telegram chat, so that it's pulling data from where it already exists and doesn't require people to do too much. So that's the basic premise. The site is, there's also always more improvements in decentralization to make in terms of the URL, the wallet experience, all of that, but there is a current demo live, and if anybody answers any of those questions, it'll actually show up in the results live, and then we can kind of see which opinions are consensus and controversial at this event. So thank you for your time.
For what you are building. Seems like really practical thing to understand collective opinions. So now I want to invite Carol. He will give a dive on social identity theory. Send me Carol, okay?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And actually, I think how do you present this? Do you present? Do I just like zoom in? I think I'll just zoom in. Do I? Nice. Perfect. Hey, I'm Carlo. I'll just basically at some point I did a bachelor's in politics, psychology, law, economics, and I had some courses on group processes. And then we went into a bunch of theories. And at some point I was talking with some people outside of the party, and then I was just asking them about how they do their decision making. And I thought that these frameworks are kind of interesting just to, I don't know, look at how you do things. So I'll just kind of dump them on you. So we're gonna do a little practice exercise. Obviously, only if you feel like doing it. Basically, if you take your phone out and then you open a messaging app or some notes, I'll just have a question for you, and then you're gonna write your own private answers in there. I'm never interested in it. Yeah, so let's start the intro. So who are you right now? You can think of yourself, like for example, I'll go with myself. I'm a student, I'm an Edge City attendee, I'm Romanian, I'm agnostic in terms of religions, and basically now these things that I said are kind of the salient identities. So like the things that I'm thinking the most of that I don't know, I'm going, or like I'm presenting, that's also an identity. So I'm going to act within these identities to an extent. And yeah, basically this is the theory. You can also just Google it. It's again, just a way of looking at things. It doesn't, doesn't necessarily represent reality. And yeah, basically we think of ourselves as group members, and there's certain groups that we feel like we belong to more, and some groups that we don't belong to. Let's say you're a Manchester fan, you're like in group with other Manchester fans, but you, I don't know, hate Liverpool. And it's like you're gonna feel in-group belongingness with Manchester people and absolutely despise the Liverpool people. But at the same time, when you're outside of some football matches, you're just gonna think of them as people, and maybe you're not gonna discriminate them as much. So yeah, that's like one thing, this in-group, out-group behavior. Basically, you think of yourself as having this identity, and then you're gonna behave differently towards people that don't have your identity. And this is kind of, I'm sharing this just as a way of, I don't know, looking at things. And there's this paper, and they basically say that, yeah, you can have these different identities. They can belong to categories, but these categories can also overlap. Like you're a Manchester fan, but maybe you're also a Liverpool fan, or yeah. And there's different things that happen within these networks. So let's say some nodes, if we're gonna use this framework of graph theory, there's some nodes that are more central. Some people look up to them. There's yeah, different homogeneity, like we either completely share an opinion, like we hate Liverpool, or we kind of differ in opinions, we're kind of chill with it. And then it's also, this is what I'm trying to get at, you are part of these groups, you act within them, and let's say you want to act, like make some change, and you want to see how effective you will be at effecting this change, and there's different strategies that you can employ. So yeah, this is just basic stuff, so you have these nodes, just the circles, and then the relationships can be, yeah, in between them. Some relationships are stronger. This is just, I wanted to share this because some people were talking about the deep funding previously, and this is an output graph by Vitalik on the philosophical and practical dependencies of Ethereum. It's like Ethereum is in the middle, and then you have the cypherpunk movement, or you have some open source stuff, you have techno progresses, whatever. And yeah, within these networks, there's yeah, basically some relationships. Not gonna go deeper in that. And you wanna manage them, and how do you manage them?
And this goes to another course that I did, which is emotions. Like, you want to be able to be aware of kind of who you are at a given time and the things that you feel, and how can you regulate or influence these things that you feel. And it's one thing to manage your own emotions and to be aware of yourself, and it's also another thing to manage other people's emotions. Like, now I'm managing managing my own emotions while I'm managing your emotions by kind of seeing if you're paying attention to what I'm saying. And then, like, if you're going to change in terms of that, I will also kind of act more on that idea or kind of go back. So, like, the point that I'm trying to make, that it's important to, be aware of yourself, the emotions that you have, and what other people also experience, and basically their goals, behaviors, intentions, and then how can you affect them. And this thing is kind of, again, just a framework to think about it. You can obviously change it and stuff. And now, related to emotions, to go more practical into the self-regulation element, there's this paper that I like. The references at the end, I shared the slides in the group chat. It's basically, there's multiple strategies. In the bottom right, you can see controlled breathing or progressive muscle relaxation. Top right, you can see meditation or mindfulness training. And like, maybe you guys actually do those things. In the middle, that's my favorite, cognitive reappraisal. Like, I just think of the situation in a different way that makes me feel better. I wanted to share it because I feel like, I don't know, I haven't seen people talking about self-regulation strategies, and it kind of makes sense in terms of like, how do you manage yourself? How can you manage other people and offer actually strategies so they can control themselves and others? And now, just as a simple example, let's say you're a manager, you have a friend, you have a relationship with your friend, but they're also your employee, and maybe they're not performing well, and you're gonna have a conversation with them. And you both have the identity of like, employer, manager, but you also have the friendship identity. And then it kind of matters to you, like, do I want to progress my business faster, or can I kind of not care about the financial productivity because he's my friend and I don't want him to feel bad. And then it kind of matters how you talk to them, like how you manage them, basically. You can also look at different types of identities, like national identities, China versus US, the people that are in there, the different ideologies they have, the agendas they have, and kind of how they manage each other. And now about actually impacting change within these groups, I also like this theory that, it's called extended theory of planned behavior. It basically says that the biggest prediction of behavior has the intention, and then like you can affect people's intention to do things. And let's say me doing a presentation here, like it seemed doable because whatever, I just had to sign up somewhere. Other people are doing presentations, so it's a common thing. So it's not that difficult to have this intention, and it seems like a good thing. You know, we're in the, I don't know, Zuzalu, Edge City vibe, so it's kind of, you want to do presentations, share your knowledge with the people. So then I actually have the intention of doing it, and then I'll actually do it, which is what I'm doing now. You can also look at other examples. I like this voting one because I really think we should have more political participation from crypto people into politics. And just gonna do a voting one. Let's say there's a rich person in Belgium, and in Belgium you have mandatory voting. It's like 90% turnout at the last federal election, because if you don't vote, you get some penalty. And this is voting is kind of, or talking about voting is a common part in dinner conversations. It's just a common thing. So they think, this individual thinks that it's a good thing to vote. Basically everybody votes, and voting, let's say, I don't think it's like that, but let's say they vote by post, so it's an easy thing. So basically their intention is, I'm gonna go vote because it's an easy thing to do. In Romania though, it's a representative democracy. Let's say we have an individual which doesn't have a lot of political education, and they're also, to an extent, manipulated by the media into thinking that all politicians are the same. So their attitude is that, voting is bad, it doesn't amount to anything, I shouldn't do it, my family and friends don't do it, so why should I bother doing it? Also, I need to wait in lines to do it, I should be making money, it's not worth it. And this is just, not gonna go into this, but basically some strategies are better than others. There's this paper, I just referenced it. And the conclusion is, we can look at ourselves as individuals that have identities, and then we can just use some visual frameworks or customer relationship management systems to kind of see, Keith is, I don't know, LCT attendee, he has this style of pedagogy, he has, I don't know, he doesn't interrupt others, whatever, I put him in my system, and then I see how I manage my relationship with him. And that can be productive because, yeah, you have a lot of people in these networks, they have different identities, and then you can kind of go into, yeah, quantifiable measurements of your different strategies and seeing how you impact the different ones. And yeah, that's pretty much it. These are the references. So overall, I just wanted to share these things like social identity theory, just Google it. It talks about identities you have, and then it goes into group processes. The second thing is extended theory of planned behavior. It's basically, yeah, you have some intentions to do some things. What are the influences on that intention? Same with other people. Another one is emotional regulation strategies. So you're feeling emotions, you want to learn what these emotions actually are, how you can manage them, how you can manage other people's emotions. And yeah, just this framework of graph networks. You can look at these things as graphs. You can look at the different relationships you have with different individuals or even with the different identities. And these things can also change through time. You can look at them as, yeah, nodes, edges, strengths, put measurements on them. So that is pretty much about it. Thank you. Yeah, any questions? Any practical or like, that's weird, or, please?
How we can replicate these learnings in a like kind of reputation protocol in crypto, for example, because it can be kind of like protocols. What's your like opinion on it?
So, in short, you're like how to apply this to reputational systems? I
Yes.
mean,
The question is like how to apply these learnings to like, for example, like reputation protocol driven by crypto technologies.
yeah, that's a very good question. Personally, like, do you care about the anonymity of the individuals or not?
Could you repeat?
Do you care, like, do you care about the anonymity of individuals or not? I'm asking this because, for example, there's this reputation social scoring thing called EFOS, and it's basically kind of just bots talking, like saying that other bots are good, we have a good social thing, and or do we not care, like?
I think anonymity should be like optionable, so we should treat
guess-
both ways.
Honestly, I don't know. That's my honest take. I would, as I mentioned previously in the DIAC reading thing, there's this argumentation structure called toolmin arguments, and I would love if basically the people within the network, as they talk, they would also kind of use these frameworks to explain how they rationalize things, like what's their claim, what's their warrant, what's their backing, what's their data, what's the rebuttal, and then kind of see how, like kind of beyond, like, I don't know, somebody talks to you and they give you an argument and you kind of, I don't know, take it with a significant degree of, I don't know, of confidence. Let's say Vitalik says something to you and you're like, bro, that's super cool, amen. And somebody says the same thing to you and it's like, do you put more weight on this relationship just because there's some halo effect, or is it the strength of the argument? And I feel that like in the communication process in this network, but yeah, it's, I don't know, reputational system, so it's pretty wide. If you would have this chain of thought and like very structured, almost autistic-like ways of reasoning, it would be, I don't know, easier to their reputation. Because this is basically like, how do you impact the behaviors of other people? And like, how would we even know how you impact them? Like, I don't know. That's my brain dump. Cool, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carol, for providing us insights. I would love to compute my projection, you know, of this my friends. Yes, but yeah, the next one I want to invite Tucci. Tucci, she is provide us some cool insight outside of the thing of the things we usually used to see. It's a I believe consciousness track and telepathy ideas behind it.
Yeah, I think I'm not gonna show slides. I got inspired from Atin that, you know, he just writes the outline on his terminal and then shows it. I was gonna do that, but I'm not gonna do that either. If I have time, maybe I'll show a couple of videos in the end. Let me start my time. How do you load it here? Hi everyone. I'm Tuğçe, and yeah, I'll give a little bit of different perspective about collective intelligence. I think today more from consciousness and a neuroscience perspective. Most of you know me here as someone running this telepathy experiment, synchronicity experiment, some matchmaking from love and from brain and heart signals. They look like related, also look like a little bit irrelevant. So I think I'm gonna give you first more like what I'm trying to do in like high level, and then how I connect it to collective intelligence. So basically, what I'm trying to do with all those experiments is making those invisible connections visible. Everything that kinda, and focusing on synchrony, like neuroscience part of it. For example, when you take synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that you think like, how does this happen? Like, what is the probability? What are the chances of this is gonna happen? So I built these frameworks on top of assuming that you have a connection with that person. Why doesn't it happen with other, I don't know, like 100 people that you know, but with that person specifically? So it started from that place. So I call those people my clicks, basically, the people that I click with. And everything that I'm trying to do with this synchronicity and telepathy and neuroscience measurement is actually find people who you click with. But when I say click, there are those people that you just meet, and after 5-10 seconds, you just click with them. You know if you're gonna get along or not. And apparently, it's not only getting along, but it's a measurable concept actually from your brain signals. So when I discovered that last year, it's a new neuroscience research, and there are so many papers coming out like recently, especially in this last couple of years. Basically, there's this metric called brain synchronization, and when two people interact in a meaningful way, their brain starts synchronizing, meaning they start producing some similar patterns. In a really, really simple explanation of that metric is basically alignment of some frequencies in your brain signals in a timely manner. So basically you do that like spatial and temporal alignment in your brain signals, and this is the metric that they measure. What makes me excited about this research specifically, because usually all those research and papers on that one is task dependent. And what they find out is, let's say, if your brains are more synchronized in a relationship, you feel more cooperative, collaborative, understanding, more empathy. Your marriage is even longer and better, you are happier. If your brains are more synchronized when you are listening to a music performer, you enjoy music much better. If it's in a classroom setup, if synchronization is higher between teacher and student, the learning is happening much faster, retainment is happening much higher. So after reading all of those different literatures, like to me, this is like a metric of connection. Like it shows how much you feel connected to a person. So how am I gonna, like how I apply this thing into collective intelligence a little bit, I'll go there. So how I was detecting my clicks in my own world last year, I was just doing experiments and basically like synchronicities. Then following those synchronicities took me to that neuroscience research actually, like brain synchronization. And there are so many ways actually that you can increase brain synchronization with someone. Like two years ago, there's a new Nature paper came out, like eye gaze increase brain synchronization. And we all know intuitively or from your ancient wisdom, like, you know, like eye gaze increases connection. But now we know and we can see on EEG or other fMRI signals that increase brain synchronization. So yes, that metric shows connection, but also a couple of other interesting research coming up related to that research again. There's this woman, Professor Talia Whitney. She claims that, for example, when two brains that are synchronized comes together, it creates this another consciousness that is bigger than summation of the two consciousness that creates that. that was really interesting for me. I'm like, oh, that is really interesting. Then after a while, I heard, maybe you guys know him, Federico Fagan, like he's the inventor of CPU. But after he had this a little bit of mystic experience in the middle of the night, he got so obsessed with consciousness and stuff. So he now developed his own consciousness theory, and so maybe I'll show a video later. But he, in one of his talks, he also says that when you when two systems, you can think of it, any physical system, brain, human, or anything, like interact and then communicate and then get into the same resonance, which is like basically synchronization. They also create this another consciousness. So I think that part, makes me a little bit more into that. Like there are so many applications of that research, but one thing that I'm gonna mention here is, like, after I learned about this research, I started paying more attention when I was talking to my colleagues. So people also, like I use, for example, Josh's knowledge graph here to run synchronistic experiments because it helps us to find those connections. But basically, yeah, what I call my colleagues is like on that knowledge graph, the people that I'm connected that is not visible. But when I'm talking to them, I realize that, so if I really become present and talk to them and let myself get into that information flow, sometimes there are really interesting insights and ideas and some memories. And then sometimes they say something and I'm like, how did you say this? Like observing that thing also brought me that, okay, there is a really another level of consciousness you create, I think, when you bring like two resonant brain together. And then my next question is then that can we scale it even more than like two people, two like groups? Like if I can solve my own problem, let's say talking to my own clique and just, like I had such an insight, like can we use that like group synchronization to solve collective problems? And then can we create a collective intelligence to solve collective problems? I think that's why I'm trying to build that click map for everyone, like, to find their own cliques and then create their own collective intelligence. Which also then, I'll talk a bit more. Because when I learned about that thing, so it immediately brought some memories. There's another Turkish person here, maybe he will understand me better, but when we were kids, growing up in Middle East, there are those groups, religious groups. They look scary usually, those men, like with huge beard and then black stuff. And then they used to have those like rituals, like breathing together, dancing together, making sound together, turning together, like, it's like, and then they create this like unity, oneness feeling, and I don't know what is going on, but they were so scary to me because, like, I don't know, I grew up with such a bias on them. But then after learning about those research, I started thinking they knew something. I think like those people, like, to create that, collective, because everything they do, like when I watch the video that actually I want to show, maybe here, maybe I'll show. Actually, can I connect it? Yeah. Where is the cable? Because one of my friends actually sent it to, because he knows that I'm so into synchronization and stuff. And there's gonna be an audio. I have this outline here. I think I'll show you this one. Yeah, this one. Now there are neuroscience researchers showing that, moving in the same rhythm, listening the same music, chanting the same mantra actually synchronizes. and what these guys do, and then they get even more and more like, you know, just creating this energy flow and creating this unity feeling. So they knew something, I think. Like now with recent neuroscience research, I'm just trying to connect like, you know, this. And how can we maybe create now new rituals to create a different kind of collective intelligence. I just want to finish because just because I'm from consciousness residency and I think a lot about those things. So now, I don't know how many people, for example, would create the optimal number to create this, like, you know, collective intelligence. But one number keeps coming up in all these ancient cultures. Again, like 7, 8 people. There's this book called like Power of 8, and there's this journalist did a lot of experiments, and she found out when you bring 8 people together, I think it's the yeah, they claim that it's the optimal number. I don't know how, but so to me, then in my mind, there's this model, or not hardware, but hub that I would love to create or build, maybe after here, because that thing came out a little bit when I was preparing experiments for consciousness residency. But I think there's this like hub that if you can build with like 8 people, 8 or 9, once you create synchronization, or let's call it coherence, like, or resonance, they are all like exchangeably similar words these days. But when you connect your brain and heart together, I think this is one connection to some kind of intelligence that you already have. And then when you sync actually to other brain hemisphere, from hemisync, we know that that also expands consciousness. People who apply hemisync, like they have some reach to, I don't know, out-of-body experiences and stuff. And then I'm like, okay, what if we connect each brain heart and then 8 people together to each other? I think that could be one way of, like, you know, kind of convolutional neural networks, how they download the information, like collectively, not individually, but I think collectively. Yeah, I think that's just, I also want to show one little, I explained it, but I'm going to show you a Sora video that I've done just to explain, like, what is it that in my mind. If it's open, I think. Yeah.
Connection to the source complete.
So basically, I was just thinking, like when you connect brain and heart together, that you have like individual connection, and then when you bring
to the source
8, 9 of them together, and then achieve this brain and heart collective synchronization.
Connection to the source complete.
Creating collective intelligence in terms of consciousness. And thank you for everyone who building those, you know, tools to help us to understand really what's going on and how can we understand this collective intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucci. I'm really happy that we can actually discuss this phenomena outside of software and algorithms, which seems like super cool stuff. We can use collective intelligence directly with our brains. But when we learn it. Yeah, but now we must use software. And the next and the last talk, I would invite Josh, who built like really fascinating thing based on some collective dynamics, which have been observed quite recently. And yeah, he will tell us about these Veritas protocols, truth-seeking protocol he built. Josh, thank you.
Anyone know how I get this thing there? Yes, sure. I'm gonna read from my notes. Okay. Oh shit. It's gonna be on the right. Okay. Maybe what I can do is this. Yeah, it's there. All right. I've got my notes on the computer here. I haven't prepared a presentation because I didn't have much time. But I'm going to keep this up basically the whole time. I launched this like 2 days ago, so there's hardly any activity. But this ranks media using the economy. And I guess I'll get to that at the end. So I find this collective intelligence idea pretty fascinating. I actually stumbled into this. I didn't know that this was even a school of thought, which I now realize today that it is. But from January this year, I started working on a project to elicit a crowd wisdom, a crowd opinion, which in some sense is like a distilled collective intelligence about a particular idea. This is like a crowdsourced belief or crowd wisdom. The common way that we do this today is with a popular vote. And I've stumbled upon some research that suggests that this is not actually the optimal way to elicit a crowd opinion, considering that there is a lot of bias attached to popularity, especially in the social context. So what I've done is instead try to distill a collective intelligence leveraging the market. As we know, the market and its associated prices are a sort of distillation of collective intelligence, a sort of consensus about the value of a particular thing. And the beauty here is that you can actually earn money by nudging in real time prices towards this collective consensus, which I find pretty fascinating. And recently, this has only been about goods. It morphed in recent history into sort of financial contracts. But when you put prediction markets into the picture, the original paper by Robin Hanson, the inventor of prediction markets, was titled Idea Futures, which is pretty fascinating to me, considering that you can now leverage this idea of market behavior, pricing, towards a convergent collective truth to price ideas and the validity of the ideas themselves. He called them futures because his initial conception of them was to find the truth collectively of the probability of a future event. I'm trying to leverage this idea not about future events and the probabilities about them, but just to understand human belief about arbitrary things at all. And we can sort of get into how that is structured. But first, the question is sort of why use a market? I quite liked Josh's presentation about collectively sort of organizing ideas, using LLMs. This is very fascinating. You can leverage you can sort of distill a lot of meaning from this. Prices are like a hidden contextual meaning. You have to kind of make a guess about what it is. So there's actually a drawback to using the market in some sense. It's not like an essay that is the result. It's actually like a price or a probability. But there are benefits. The benefit is that you can incentivize honesty. If you want to use this these sort of collective intelligence ideas practically in any sense, I've come to realize that you can only do this if you can somehow incentivize honest behavior, considering that it's so easy to corrupt what the consensus is, especially if it's sort of owned in a centralized way. I've built this on the blockchain, on Solana. That sort of helps. So yeah, we can track ideas. And what I tried to do is design a system where if you add novel information and there's consensus over that information, you should earn money. This is the incentive to participate in the game. but there's also now a way that collectively we can sort of harness the value that we create in a collective knowledge. And the way that this happens is I initially started by having people just put skin in the game, put up a stake to calibrate this game theory, and then ask people their opinion about something, which comes in the form of a probability distribution. So why exactly are we using a probability distribution? It seems to add in a bunch of complications. Well, the reason is you can run algorithms that are information theoretic over it, such that you can actually calculate in real time how much information you are gaining through this process in an exact number of bits, and thus reward malicious behavior, uninformed behavior, honest behavior, and informed behavior. So the initial conception was actually not my idea. I stumbled across some research from 2004 by an MIT Sloan economics professor called Drazen Prelec. And he had an idea. He wrote a paper about it called Bayesian Truth Theorem, which was a game theoretically sound game where you all the participants submit 2 beliefs about a particular topic, and this is sort of a score out of 100. You can use this to determine the truth about something, the relevance about something, the novelty. You're coordinating essentially around an idea that is expressed in language, which is how you extract the meaning of whatever this price is. I've ranked relevance of content using a pricing mechanism, and I'll explain why I've chosen this media route in a second. But essentially, the 2 beliefs are how relevant you think this information is, and how relevant you think everyone else will think this information is, or true, instead of relevant. And the reason you do this is because you can calibrate the game theory and then in real time figure out how much humanity has learned that it didn't know that it actually did know. And this is the surprisingly popular idea. There's knowledge that exists as private knowledge in humanity. It's not yet public. You have them express it in a private setting. And it ends up that true collective knowledge surfaces as something that was more popular than collectively everyone thought it was. And you can think of this as learning in some capacity. So this is pretty cool. You can then reward and penalize with the stakes. I wanted to extend this into time. This is a single-shot game, and I found it very interesting. If we could track people's beliefs like this about arbitrary things over time, that would be pretty awesome. So what I did was I added a few things on top. I added a notion of uncertainty, which can be calculated using a complex term called Jensen-Shannon divergence, which is essentially how much are people disagreeing with their probability distributions. How much are they overlapping each other? How much are they dispersed? And you can sort of calculate this also in an information theoretic sense. And if uncertainty was decreasing with time, say it decreases by 4%, then we can sort of score. If it decreases, we can know that we are learning something, and then score it with 4% economic intensity. So we've only learned 4%, then we only have 4% intensity. This makes sense. If we are increasing our uncertainty, then we shouldn't be scoring at all. Another word for uncertainty in the information theoretic sense is entropy. All right, I'll pick it up then. I'm sort of only about halfway. I got 2 minutes. So this is actually very similar to an idea called the free energy principle by Carl Friston. Free energy principle is like a theory of everything about the way that living organisms and other structures like societies make decisions and how their intelligence manifests. And this is sort of the idea that they are always trying to minimize surprise. And either they have a predictive model of the world and a model of their current understanding of the world. And as evidence comes in real time, either they update their inner model to minimize surprise, or they intervene with current reality to warp it towards what they initially thought it was. So this sort of informs action and understanding, and it makes a lot of sense. It actually is very related to the initial design of Veritas. So I don't have much more time. I've actually got more to speak about, but and about what this project has morphed into. But you can see prices on the screen. These ideas about extending into time was a bit crazy. It was a bit ridiculous. It doesn't actually price things in real time. You can still price things in real time with a novel prediction market that I've developed. And I know I'm running out of time, but I want to draw it for you on the board because this is the computationally intensive process, but people actually want to arbitrage reality to make money and push it towards human consensus, and that's the best way to leverage this idea. So the way that this prediction market mechanism works is you have a long and a short token, and you can buy either side. Currently, if content is sitting at 60% relevance, and you think it's actually more relevant than that, you can make money by buying long, and vice versa, and they are sort of inversely coupled. So if these axes are the supplies of these tokens, these are inversely coupled bonding curves, and say this is supply of short, this is supply of long. This curve manifests as a circle intuitively, where here it would be full support for long, nobody thinks short. Here would be full support for short, nobody thinks long. The circle is actually just this part, because the supplies can't be negative. And as you buy long, let's say you're here. As you buy long, supply of long increases, it gets minted to you, and gets progressively more expensive. But also, short gets progressively less expensive, and vice versa. If you buy short, short will become more expensive, long becomes less expensive. And this manifests itself as a sort of tug of war, like a push and pull between belief. And you can attach this to arbitrary ideas, completely arbitrary ideas. I've attached it to the relevance of information, and for a very particular reason. I've screwed this up. Can you help me move it? I think. Sorry. Oh, cool. I've attached this to information and media, considering there's huge issues with misinformation. In our world today. So this can rank by a collectively intelligent sort of market-driven force, but it's completely arbitrary. It supports different types of media, and thus you can almost see like a collective consciousness surface up to the top with regards to what the world is thinking is useful to see in real time. I imagine this to solve a lot of our media issues with the news and different analysis, but I've run out of time. Thank you.
Seriously fascinated by these ideas. I hope it will, surf the long tail of predictions and will seriously compete with poly market, probably at some informational niches, yeah? And yeah, it's pretty cool. What you're building will wait for actual implementation. When you are going to deploy it on to the mainnet, Josh? Josh, when are you going to deploy it?
It's deployed, it's live.
It's live.
It's live.
So we can trade the shit,
Yeah, you can post and you get free shit points.
shit points. Okay, super cool. Amazing, I will try it. I hope we will have some 5 minutes. The next participants will allow us 5 more minutes. I want to touch the last topic of today's conference, and this is collective focus theorem. You can scan the code with the full text. But in short, it's my development. It's just like 6 months ago. I find out really fascinating property, which was, well, pretty known, but if you apply it to multi-agent cryptographic token-based setting, it's, demonstrate really tremendous opportunities to build on top of that, and I want to share this idea today to you. In short, this collective focus theorem, it proves that token-weighted random walks in fully authenticated graphs converge to unique stationary distribution. Sounds like really weird shit. I slowly will explain you what does these words mean, okay? Fully authenticated graphs, it's the graphs which are like shaped by the transactions with 3 basic arguments of knowledge, okay? And these 3 basic arguments of knowledge actually answered 3 fundamental questions: who, when, and what, okay? When, who is like the pub key of the agent who is doing that, when is the Unix time step, which time-stamped by some consensus algorithm, doesn't matter, like you can use Merkle clocks for that. And what is basically the link between 2 content identifiers, which are IP fast hashes, okay? So you can store it, it's completely compact and fully authenticated way on the blockchain. Yeah, these fully authenticated graphs are really important for working in distributed settings. Next thing is random walk. Random walk is kind of super cool thing, and I believe it's probably one of the most, maybe the most fundamental process in the universe. Okay, why? It's simple. It's a local, extremely memory-limited exploration process. So, like, each step depends only on the current position and local transition probabilities. You don't need to know the global state to like do that in any environment. And it happens that we observe a random walk on any scale in the universe, from like atomic behavior to the societal kind of behavior. And like the core idea is local exploration here like leads to global equilibrium. Well, it wasn't me who proved that fact from, it's a well-proven fact from standard Markov chain theory. I don't have enough time and will not focus on the proofs. But serious stuff behind the idea that it's local exploration which leads to global equilibrium actually lead to unique stationary distribution, okay? And this unique stationary distribution is the stuff which is like the most important in this idea. What is unique stationary distribution? Well, distribution, like in our context of fully authenticated knowledge graph, means that we have these observation probabilities within the graph, okay? So you have like this knowledge represented as like knowledge graph. And when you randomly walk over the graph, like iteration after iteration, you can collect all the probabilities with which like anyone walking the same random walk within the same graph actually will observe these nodes, okay? Which is very important property. But stationary adds to this equation is that observation probabilities become stable. Okay, so like if someone add something to this knowledge graph, actually it doesn't disrupt like the majority of topology of the graph. And the last property which is actually make change in the whole equation is uniqueness. What does it mean? That this stable probability distribution become shared for all of us independently on how, in which direction we compute these observation probabilities. And like what is what I call like stable, coherent, computable collective focus, okay? So if like we have the same knowledge graph, which we authenticate using simple cryptography, and trying to compute the random walks over this graph, given even very limited knowledge of partitions of this graph, we will converge anyway for the same probabilities in the end. I call this I want to shift the focus from like attention, yeah, to the focus, yeah, because currently in the I field we're talking primarily around about attention, but actually the focus is seems like the more complex thing, and I would apply it to the idea of collectiveness. The last important understanding in this proof, yeah, is this token weighting. Everyone talk about security of collective of AI models, but here token weighting allow agents to express the will, like how they would affect these probability distributions, okay? So like you take into account not only topology of the graph, but actually you can, implementing different token mechanics, for example, people from Bonfire can issue tokens one way. Like you can use proof of work for issuing tokens and then measuring these probability distributions. Actually, the way how you do issue tokens in this collective focus idea, it's like up to you as a protocol developer, app developer, but you can compute this token, account for this token balances to compute this collective probability distribution. And this token weighting is super important thing for application and blockchain settings, okay? So I will repeat. Collective focus theorem proves that token-weighted random walks in fully authenticated graphs converge to unique stationary distribution. I believe this is an important property which is required for building superintelligence. It's something like really collective. So like almost any idea can be applied on top of that. Josh mentioned that he using kind of metrics from his market to find out relevance, yeah, but relevance is a bit more complicated, and like the foundation of relevance stems from like random walk, like Brownian like motion, probably. So like for example, Josh can apply this idea for like building his relevance mechanism, and like the idea is not the new one. I launched the Bostrom blockchain. It's a blockchain with collective focus. 5 years ago already, and have some measurements, have some results, so it's actually applied science already. It was just that I was first build the software when I proved the properties. Yeah, and it consists of like 3 million files and formatted by 50,000 people all around the world. And I think what is important is like, I want to let you know that tomorrow it will be 5 years for Bostrom. And I invite you to let me tell you the story of the Bostrom, why it didn't take off, what mistakes have been done within this project. And we will discuss more about these collective focus ideas and how they apply, okay? Yeah, basically I just want to mention that this is, I believe, will be like, we are building on a real land, but it's very rare when some like real life projects are combined with very like cutting edge weird ideas. And like I want to build Siberia as a super intelligent network city, build on really solid scientific foundation of collective intelligence. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah. This is my shield. This is my shield, and also I want to thank you, people today who find the time to speak around the ideas. Important stuff, guys. I believe that we will, like, as time goes on, we will develop more and more on top of these ideas, on predictive models, prediction markets, free market ideas and move from the like one agent learning to more like collective learning processes. Thank you all. See you.